Anyone besides me want to see a rap battle between these two? We open this week with Masahiro sitting at the main character's seat. Wait, so were we wrong about Sora being the first blue lead ever? Hell, it was even kind of backed up by the following scene, as after skipping school that day, Sora had gone back home and symbolically left behind her notebook. This was especially significant because, as we said last week, that book represents both her goals as a hero and her ties to Masahiro. Thus, she left behind what were the most important things in her life as she went back to her parents' home. There, she was greeted by her mom and her little brother. Wait, so this kid's name is Red? I mean, just play an Akiba Ranger clip. Akiba! Red Dog! Also, yeah, Sora's dad got a new VA for reasons you should look up for yourself why, and maybe pay your respects if you feel it necessary. That said, and no disrespect, but I do like this VA a lot more personally. You know, the king could probably deal with evil Judai no problem. Seriously, Evil Heroes isn't that powerful of a deck style. Over dinner, she explained her situation to her family, including how her pen had failed her, and it wasn't because the batteries were dead. Okay, but seriously, this was actually a good emotional scene with her parents and brother sharing in her depression. The latter was especially in shock, as he clearly saw his sister as a major role model, not unlike the person Sora was thinking about when she abdicated her duties. All in all, a good emotional scene that...
And it's gone.
I mean, Daddy Jack kind of saved the scene, but yeah, I already find this kid to be amongst one of the worst Reds. Back with the rest of the team, we had an interesting conflict of interest amongst our protagonists. Tsubasa believed that they should at least try to talk Sora into coming back, while Masahiro felt they should just give her some space. Neither side was necessarily wrong with their choices, and did bring up good arguments for why they should take their approach. Regardless, Yo-Yo brought up the best argument in that no matter what they did, Sora wasn't going to return if they couldn't repair her broken dreams that were the result of her failing to fulfill her duties as a Precure. Ultimately, the B team would return empty-handed when they just missed Sora, and Mrs. Haruwataru reinforced Masahiro's views. Again, I don't think Tsubasa was wrong to try his approach, but ultimately, both her mother and, yes, Masahiro knew her just a little better. As for why Sora was out, she had gone with her father to a lake where she likely made one of her first hero declarations. In particular, this has been right after she had tried to fight some bullies, only to get beaten back for her troubles.
You know, for kids!
But yeah, this was clearly before she became frickin' Saitama, and thus was still very unsure if she was even suited to be a hero, until her father simply asked. With the words of the burning soul and the clear mind of the shooting stars above her, Sora had found the conviction to become a hero. However, now was a very different time, and major kudos to this dramatic direction, where they cut away just before she seemingly threw away her tone. Again, episodes like this are a little hard to give my opinion for when most of them are just going to be, this is really good. I mean, come on, can you at least give me something I can make a joke out of? Thank you. Yeah, unquestionably, this episode featured peak Batabonda, as he almost seemed to go out of his way to be as condescending and toxic as possible. It's the perfect example of a villain you love to hate, as if anything, his troll game was in top 4.
That makes sense to me.
Masahiro and the B team went out to stop him, but not before the former asked her grandmother to deliver a letter to Sora. With that, they transform with no happy music and no real sequences this week because they really have to hammer home how serial this all is. And again, I really gotta praise transitions like this. Can we just give Koji Ogawa an award already? Meanwhile, Yo-Yo gave Sora her granddaughter's letter. Sure enough, Masahiro comforted her and said that they'd be okay without her. as even though Sora initially tried to prevent her from becoming a Precure only to eventually accept her, Mashiro had now flipped the board on her.
真城さんが傷つくなんて嫌だって。だから今度は私の番だ。
You know what? Just this once, we'll let the ships make their noise. And again, I can't stop praising the transitions in this episode, as with every sentence Sora read, we then cut back to Mashiro fighting on behalf of her friend. No, yeah, and the fight here was good, and we even got some new damage variations to Ageha and Tsubasa's finishers, but forget all that. Can we just go focus on Sora just standing there and reading the letter? As sure enough, even though she said they'd be okay without her, Mashiro tried to convince her that she was worthy of being a hero. But, as we said, it's hard to view a person as a hero when they go against all of their own principles and convictions. And yet, even if Sora couldn't believe in herself, there was one person who could believe in the hero girl who couldn't believe in herself. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I legit kind of teared up here. Sure enough, Masho's belief in her became her own belief and gave Sora back her pen. And while the music here was perfectly fine and matched well with the scene, I just feel this music works a little better. And after some more awesome key animation from Takashi Morita, Sora very appropriately called in her personal hero girl in Mashiro, and they finished the Ronborg off with their dual finisher, which while it was still visually unimpressive on its own, it was absolutely perfect for this scene and the build-up it had. However, there was still the little issue of saving Shala, who they did make a big deal of being on Undark Energy life support, so they had to handle this very carefully and...
That's it?
Yeah, I'll say right now, I have a lot of issues with the resolution of this episode, starting with this rushed rescue of Shala. Granted, they didn't have much time left in the episode, but it still did feel a little anticlimactic after all of that drama in the last episode. Like, maybe at the very least not have her wake up and congratulate Sora, and instead be comatose, leaving the situation ambiguous. Anyway, they saved the captain, while Yo-Yo of all people operated the mirror pad, and collected the last big chunk of energy they needed to save the king and queen, so yeah, there's another resolution they're just gonna close up. All the while, Batamonda tried to escape, to which our protagonist let him go.
I'm sorry, what?
I mean, yeah, I understand that Sora was up to another challenge, and also didn't want to beat a guy while he was down, but I remind you, this is Batamonda, a character who is pretty much designed for that one JoJo meme. At the very least, they should detain him so that he doesn't try to assassinate another major authority figure. Just saying, maybe you should at least talk with Nodaka before the other two Sora. Anyway, the episode ended with the team officially welcoming Sora back, in particular her partner for life returning their notebook. Cameo cure this week was of course none other than
Excuse me, what?
Yeah, don't know what happened here. Like, was Kanai Oki just unavailable? Or maybe even retired, since she hasn't been seen voice acting any notable roles aside from All-Stars Memories. Whatever the case, I hope they can work something out, because while I got nothing against Nozomi, and she even sounded spot on here, I think we can all agree we need a little more love in our lives. You know an episode's good when I risk a copyright claim with some music. To say the very least, this episode did almost everything right when it came to a rising from the ashes story. Though that said, it's not perfect, especially that resolution, where they almost outright fumbled the ball completely. And while I'll admit right now that I'm a little surprised that we didn't get like a new finisher or anything, I don't think it was at all necessary, because we really just needed to focus on what's most important here, our main duel. As has been said, and has continued to be proven so, our original duel had been the core of the season that makes about 1,001 references to the OG. And yet, I'm not even sure if Nagisa and Honoka had this many instances of one holding up the other when they were down. For this story, Mashiro was one of, if not the major contributing factors to getting Sora out of her rut. She did this by simply showing understanding for her struggles and giving the hero girl time to think and reflect on her actions. That said, she also did have a very strong support system, be it her Daddy Jack / Mickey Mouse, yes seriously, and the B team, even if their efforts were a little less fruitful. Still, I did like that there was a moral debate between the heroes, and in general, there was a lot of good, subtle storytelling here, which is needed for a subject matter as complicated as depression. All of this was supported by some outright brilliant direction and storyboarding by Tsuyoshi Tobita and Koji Ogawa respectively. Seriously, I could just watch this episode on mute and enjoy the visual storytelling for the most part. Yes, unfortunately, while the latter half of this episode had arguably some of the best scenes of this whole series so far, it also had one of the most rushed resolutions to what was an otherwise very heavy arc. I wouldn't be as bothered by it as I am if they hadn't dramatized it as much as they did, between the high risk of offing Shala to just how much of an outright monster Batamonda had become. Seriously, there was no need to show this dude any form of mercy, and even then, they should have at least locked him up. It just feels like a total cop-out, especially after the episode did almost everything else perfectly. Thus, overall, while I still did really like this one, especially for the relationship between the main duo, that resolution does irk me and raises a few red flags for how they might handle future resolutions just as unsatisfyingly. We'll just have to wait and see, but at the very least, the show does seem to have two perpetual hero girls who will always be there to keep the other going. Also, if you haven't seen it yet, we actually managed to get another big Precure review done in decent time at least. The third part of the Futai reviews is going to be the shortest, but I think we managed to cover everything we wanted to, including some very solid and not so solid episodes. As for what we're going to do next, well, we're still figuring that out. Honestly, I'm hooked on Raincold right now, but we'll figure something out. And until then though, farewell for now, my friends, and I feel like I'm forgetting something. Like, I don't know, something that might be appearing as an icon if it hasn't already around here or so. Yeah, legit, I'm gonna keep the camera rolling because I gotta record this next video.